Are there any new members here? New members? No. How about anyone that's never been to a meeting before? Can you raise your hand and maybe tell us who you are and where you're from? Do you mind?
Yeah.
Archaeology, but I'm also a bit of a photographer.
Hi. Great. Well, welcome.
Now reading
Beautiful.
I'm the show and tell man, and we begin on the left and the back, work our way up on the side. Anybody? Yes, Ralph.
Family picture, which I think is pretty neat. This is my wife's grandparents, taken in front of the pyramids on camels with the pith helmets, and they were. This was probably taken in the 20s. I enlarged this from an 8x10, and we have the helmet with the label from a Luxor store. They were big travelers by sea and railroad back in those days. They were in the hotel business, and they would go to
Maynard, Massachusetts. I used to work for Polaroid back in the 80s on the large cameras, and here's a portrait of me like 20-some years ago. And
someone take a before and after.
Anyway, about a year ago, Polaroid announced they're not making any more film. And so I luckily just recently got my portrait taken again with the large film that was left over.
Oh, sure.
And then we have the real thing.
So I just turned 50. This is my 50th birthday picture.
Oh.
A panorama of a club meeting that we don't know exactly when it was or where it was or who all the people in the photo are, although some of them are obvious. Jack Naylor's there, and of course Alan you can spot pretty easily. But since I'm relatively new to PHSNE, I don't recognize a lot of the faces. So what I was going to do is I scanned it. I'd like to pass them around, and if any of the members at the meeting recognize people in the photo, I've got a marking pen. You can mark these up. Just write a number on their face, and then on the back.
Today is going to be more a show and ask. Very recently I acquired a rather different little piece of equipment. It's called a Tynar, T-Y-N-A-R. It's a used 16mm motion picture film in a special cassette and produced by 14 negative. Somewhere around 1950, manufactured in California. Fairly limited and short lifespan. The interesting part of this camera, I got it in a bag and now have it just about back together, except for one thing, and that is the mechanism required to trip the shutter.
Has anyone ever heard of a gigapan? Gigapan.
Is it a sewing machine?
There was a website that was very, very active after the recent presidential inauguration, because if you go to the website, and I do believe it's on gigapan.com, you will see a photograph of several 100,000 people, and you can zoom in on individual faces. Incredible resolution, thus the name Gigapan. This particular company is an offshoot of evidently some research done at Carnegie Mellon and the NASA space program. In fact, there are a couple of rovers running around Mars right now. I believe it's the Spirit and Opportunity.
This time I happened to find one, and I've kept it in my vest pocket or my coat pocket all this time because it happens to say Daniel Jones, photographer in Liverpool. And it's the sweetest photograph of a little girl, and here in faded type it says "Our Doll," and then it says Liverpool over here. Also very interesting, and I don't know if any of you have heard of this or know what it could mean, because back in these days, and I'm figuring, what do we date this carte de visite? Maybe it's, I don't know, turn of the century, 1900-ish, kind of? Or before, maybe?
Even before that.
Even before. It's got a plain backdrop of...
Dan needs much of an introduction to any of the PHSNE members or any of the Harvard people. You know, he's been a cherished member of both organizations for more years than any of us would care to admit to, I think. And Dan had a long career with NBC before his career at Harvard, and this is one of the fruits of that, of the work that he did at NBC. If you've read the snapshots, you'll know that this is something that has not been seen very much in recent decades.
I thought we would talk a little bit before the show goes on about who the gang was that made this show, and through the who and the what, and then look at the film, which runs about a half an hour, and then talk about how the film was made. And I wrote them on a number of stills, and quite a few of them still have on the overlay tissues that were laid out by Don Hyatt, the producer, and then executed on an animation stand. And I'm going to, NBC had seen to it that a senior vice president was sent down to sit next to him. When the show was over, and I was sitting just below their table, Ike bangs on the table and said, "Darn it, this is the kind of show you guys ought to be doing all the time." Well, we got back to New York the next Monday morning, and the guy said, "Hey, fellas, what about a history of football? What about a history of baseball? Just get it!" The old Rug Pullers Association. Stab you in the back one day and kiss you the next. So let's look at the show and then talk about how it was made.
How were the ratings?
Who can tell me the assassin's name?
John Wilkes Booth.
Great. Where was the assassination taking place?
Ford's Theater.
Great. What was the name of the play?
Our American Cousin.
Very good indeed. Thank you. Oh, what did the assassin say when he jumped from the balcony to the stage? Sic semper tyrannis. Sic semper tyrannis. He broke his leg too.
Right. Which leg?
Which leg?
I don't know.
Here we run into a small problem. It's because it's traditional in PHSNE to present a thank you diploma to our speakers. Unfortunately, Dan is the person who makes the diplomas. Because other talents, he's a super calligrapher, so we had to come up with something else.
But you see, that's
Don't-
carte de visite.
Was it?
The carte de visite is my diploma.
No, it's not. The diploma's coming.
Oh, okay.
And there's no candles to blow out either.
Well, everybody get out your...
Yeah, we'll be bringing down a table with forks and plates and stuff like that for the cake, and please come down and if your hands are clean, you can look at the pictures.
Okay, very good.